Let's talk about age, because we've mentioned Mitch McConnell. This is the second time this happened. There's an odd thing that happens when Mitch McConnell has a health scare, in that Washington begins to talk about Joe Biden's age. It's not necessarily fair to Joe Biden, but here we are.
Or to Mitch McConnell, who is having all these serious health problems.
Serious health problems, and obviously everybody wishes him well. And Joe Biden, in a kind of almost archaic move, given how Washington is, wished him well. It doesn't happen in a cross-partisan way anymore. But talk about this. Is there a chance that he steps down, and what would that mean?
Sure.
What would that mean for the Republican leadership in the Senate, and possibly negotiations over budget issues and government shutdown issues?
I mean, is it possible he doesn't step down at some point? It seems unlikely to me that he serves the rest of his term as the leader of the Republican Party in the Senate. It's bad, and there are several people, all of them named John, who would like to succeed him as a Republican leader, and all of them are respected.
Could you name the Johns?
John Thune, John Barrasso, and John Cornyn. So
you win a prize.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I take the mug home?
You get to take the mug, possibly.
But it's bad news for Biden in two ways. One is it spotlights age as a risk factor, which Biden doesn't need. The other thing is Biden needs McConnell for governing in the next couple months to fund the government. The government's about to run out of money at the end of this month and could shut down. The aid to Ukraine is something that Mitch McConnell has been very helpful with for the administration. So this is bad news for McConnell. This is bad news for Biden, too.
Interesting. Asma, as someone who covers the White House and also covers the Democratic electorate, is this the explanation for Biden's difficulty in the polls, his age?
It could be one of the explanations. You had the poll numbers out there earlier, and the crosstabs will show you that a majority of Democrats are concerned about Biden's age. There's no doubt. I heard this. I was out talking to a bunch of young voters at the NAACP convention this summer. It is one of the reasons. But I also think that there are other reasons why Biden has struggled in the polls. You see a lackluster support when you talk about progressives, young voters, folks on the left who don't feel like he's delivered on certain agenda items. Again, I'm not saying that these voters will turn towards Donald Trump when there's actually an ultimatum of whom to vote for. But look, I think the age question is one that you hear from a lot of Democratic activists who are concerned. It is kind of an unspoken thing amongst Democrats who will whisper it and say it very quietly that they are concerned a health scare could pop up anytime between now and next November. I think that this White House, you could say, is aware of that, and I think you don't want to say that there's necessarily a cause and effect, but if I look back in June, you all remember there was this moment where President Biden tripped over a sandbag when he was delivering remarks in Colorado. Ever since then, I've been out with him. He tends to use the lower staircase in going up Air Force One. That was not a routine thing that he did prior to that, at least that I recollect. And, look, is it a cause and effect? Who knows? But nobody within the Democratic circle really wants to take the risk of a president tripping as he's going up on the plane.
Right. Mark, you've written a lot about this issue of age, and you spent some time recently with Governor Whitmer of Michigan, everybody's idea of a future Democratic presidential nominee. How bad is this for Biden? Is there any possibility that anyone in the Democratic Party is going to challenge what is now the status quo, that Joe Biden is the nominee and Kamala Harris is his running mate?
This could be wish casting. I think it gets less possible every day, but it also, look, the opportunity is there for a Democrat to, I think, give Democratic voters a choice. Now, I will say that Donald Trump has not only made Republicans terrified of him, but he's also made Democrats very risk averse. And when you're risk averse, you don't want to sort of go for a fresh face. You don't want to, try your hand at something that hasn't worked before. I mean, there's nothing more conservative than going with the guy who won the last time. Or with someone who's as familiar with him. Look, I think I could make a case, and I'm not going to bore anyone with this, but I think that a Democrat who is ambitious and savvy and respectful could make an extremely compelling case for him or herself.
What are the chances of that happening?
I don't think it happens unless Biden opens the door to it. I don't think it's going to happen without Biden saying, I'm stepping down, or for whatever reason. But if Biden did that, I think there would be a big contest including Vice President Harris, including,
I think it would split
you
the
know,
party in many
a
ways.
Midwestern Democratic governor. That is that could be a formidable candidate. Amy Klobuchar ran a respectable race last time. I mean, I think there would be a lot of competition for that, and it would be pretty messy because are you trying to deny the first Black woman to be elected to national office, deny her a chance to move up a slot? And yes, there are Democrats who'd be happy to challenge.
Kamala Harris has problems with popularity, but the base is with Kamala. Yeah, is that a fair statement?
I mean, I went out with her to a number of stops this summer, and really the campaign sees her as being specifically able to court Black and brown voters, young voters, and these are base voters that the Democratic Party needs. She has been out there a lot more on the campaign, but to your point, I think it would be very messy if Biden, for any reason, were not to run, or even frankly, and say he wins a second term and doesn't run, and if Kamala Harris is not. If a lot of other Democrats contest her, I think it could be messy for the party, and I don't know that there's a clear answer of what would happen.
Yeah, I think what's happening now is pretty messy too. It might just be quieter and less polite to talk about in public.
You mean, what do you mean by that?
Well, I think these massive poll numbers, against Biden, largely because of his age and the age itself. I mean, look, he's 80 years old. I mean, we cannot sit here and make him any younger, unfortunately. So that is to me, that is central here. And again, it's a little too clear cut to talk about, but it's very, very messy.
Right. Could you just talk for one more minute, just from your reporter perspective? You're watching him incredibly closely. You've studied the stairs of Air Force One and which staircase people use. Do you feel like he's noticeably slowed down in any form or fashion?
Look, I went out with Biden a good amount during the 2020 campaign. I think there is an attempt by the staff to manage him more closely and carefully than there was during 2020. Physically, but also even, I would say, I mean, this is no secret, right? I think that there was an effort to he doesn't do press conferences as often, right? He'll take questions here and there under the wing, but he was just more off the cuff as a candidate, speaking to reporters at different stops where he would go. Look, I think ultimately, no matter how fit or unfit somebody is, at the age of 80, potentially being 82 upon inauguration, that raises questions for anybody of any health.
I kind of wonder too how much of this is driven. Republicans on the other side have spent 4 years almost kind of weaponizing Biden's age against him. Trump is not that much younger than him, but we don't ever talk about Donald Trump's age.
See it in the poll numbers either as much.
Right.
Why is that?
I mean that's a great question, in part because I don't think you've had this years of concerted effort. I mean, Donald Trump, they were running ads showing Biden tripping every 5 seconds, and I think that creates an aura that sticks, that is sort of stuck with Joe Biden. John Trump has always been very good at branding his opponents, in ways that they can't shake. And this seems to be one of those examples. Is just talk about Biden's age and his health, and every time he coughs, we're going to put that in an ad. And they don't do. There's no counterpart to that aimed at Donald Trump, who is has a different demeanor than Biden, but certainly has things you could point out about his own age. And
could I just point out though that it's not just making an issue of Biden's age. It's lying. It's saying he's senile. It's saying he's demented. Saying he's out of it. I mean, I think it's important to sort of state for a fact that a lot of these are just smears.
Right. Mentally, he's quite acute.
Seems like it.
Yeah. Susan, how did we get to a point where in a country of 330 million people, we probably have a 77-year-old running against an 81-year-old, 78-year-old?
And by the way, the two people who ran against each other last time around.
Yeah.
And where a majority of Americans say, please do not nominate these two people. We would like to vote for somebody else.
Right. This is an essay question. You have 40 seconds to answer.
It's because we have 2 incumbent presidents. Incumbents have a lot of advantages when it comes to running again. This is incumbent President Trump against incumbent President Biden. And the likelihood, I mean, things change. It's more than a year away. But this is the most likely scenario, the most likely choice Americans are going to have next year.
And there's no off-ramp. You're not seeing any off-ramps to this contest right now.
Well, not at the moment, but should we say that, given the age of both these candidates and the fact that one of the candidates is about to go on trial? So, things happen.
Things do happen.